I think, we've already addressed and talked about it a little bit. There's times, especially when your flock's a little bit smaller, there's times when it can look discouraging for a moment, right? I think, like I said, I think it was last week when the generator kicked the power off. I said, I feel there's spiritual attacks from time to time. I feel like sometimes we have an enemy who does everything he can to cause us to lose hope. He does everything he can possible to make us look and go, man, this is useless, this is helpless, this is a winless battle. And today, I'll tell you, today is just another one of those Sundays. My back, I hadn't had back pain in almost a year, and it came back during baseball season, and it just hasn't left. And it just, once it flares up, like it decides it's really going to flare up and nag. And so today's just one of those mornings where you show up and you realize your PowerPoint's not switched over. You realize that as you're putting together this message and thinking through this topic, that this is probably one of the most important messages in the whole book. And there's probably the day when we've had the smallest congregation of all, and then you can start to question, God, where are you on the day when it's like this is supposed to be one of the biggest topics, and yet we're the smallest crowd? I tell you all of that not to complain at all, but to tell you, like, God is in this circumstance, whether there's one person here or 150 people here, right? And sometimes I think, especially as I humble myself to be like, you just need Sundays to grow in experience, to grow in leadership. Like, you just need time to grow. You need to quit beating yourself up so much. I think there's sometimes God gives us a blessing of a Sunday like this where you think that this is a really important message, and then it's not going to be heard by very many people, right? Because you got to ask yourself, why are you really here? And is God not going to do the same work in a smaller congregation that he's going to do in a bigger congregation? I was also reminded this week a couple things. One is there is a really easy path to church growth. There's a really easy path to it. I just watched a church in South Central Iowa that is growing exponentially. Every person my age is going to check a church like this out. And I listened to the pastor, and the guy sounded like a buffoon. One, he didn't sound confident in anything he was saying. Second, all he quoted was new hip stuff like LaCroix, and he tried to make it as hip as possible. His PowerPoints were really flashy. And it's no wonder that a church like that would grow so quick. Like, I'm not going to bring up the name of it because I'm not going to point the finger, but I'm going to say, guys, there's a really easy path to success. The path to success is to sell out. Okay? And I'm not saying that we're small because we do it right. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying that what we got to fight right now is any thought that we are weak because we are smaller. Right? We cannot let the devil get in here and cause us to grow desperate, or to change who we are in the foundation of what we do. All right? Like, we are going to lean on God's love. We're going to lean on his word and the truth of it. And so when certain people will skip passages because they know church growth may not happen with a hard passage in this, we're going to say, God, we're going to teach and preach your whole counsel. And we're going to trust that the people who truly want to know you, you will send them here. And if you're not sending people, either one, we're not getting out into the community enough and doing our part to invite people, or there's not people in this community who are there yet. They're not convicted enough to want to hear your counsel. So I want to make that clear that I'm not discouraged today. One, because I've been through this 5 other times, 3 of which as a youth pastor, and 2 of which serving in a senior pastor capacity. Summer gets hard for churches, especially now. Summers are hard for churches, so don't lose hope. Don't lose hope. God loves us this much. I do not believe we are under the judgment hand of God or anything like that. It's just summer, and summer's busy. I feel like we are actually on the cusp of maybe turning a corner and having something really good happen here. Just because I see the number of attacks that are going on within this congregation right now, the number of places where the enemy is trying to suppress us and maybe make us a little more desperate. And we're just not going to fall for the bait, church. We're going to continue to move forward, and we're going to continue to rest in the love of God and the work that he has for us to do. And so that brings us to our passage today, where it's how children of God love. And I'll tell you what, this has to be one of the most important passages in this book of 1 John for me, because I was just talking to a young couple this week, and they said, you know, the one thing that's a kicker for me about the church, is, man, they say God's loving, they say love everybody, and yet they are a completely different person Monday through Saturday than they are on Sunday. And one of these people, they work at a bank, and she's like, you know, some of the rudest people who come in to the bank wear crosses around their neck. And she's like, I know I shouldn't throw the baby out with the bathwater, but you got to understand, when you preach love, 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 love all the time, and then you're a jerk all the time, I don't quite see the love of God in you. And so, to me, this passage that we talk about today, looking at God's love, it is so important. It's so important. Nick Saban, great football coach, he said, you know, if you don't want to be the best, there's lots of different paths you can take. But if you want to be the best, your choices are very limited on how you want to be successful. He says successful people do things a certain way. And there's not a lot of wavering. If you want to be great, you got to be disciplined, and you got to cut a lot of bad stuff out of your life. I believe the same thing goes for the church. If we truly want to be God's image, and we truly want to love like God, we got to start cutting a lot of things out and going, there are people like those two young kids that are looking at us and going, are we loving? Is God worth serving? And God leaves us behind as his image. And so, you know, it's easy to say we're Christians. Like, let's look at what God's love does for us, enables us to do, and who he is, all right? So 1 John chapter 4, the purpose of this passage is going to be, as Christians, we recognize that love comes from God. All right? The foundation of every loving action is from God. And so 1 John chapter 4, verse 7 says, Dear friends, let us love one another, because love is from God, and everyone who loves has been born of God and knows God. The one who does not love does not know God, because God is love. God's love was revealed among us in this way. God sent his one and only Son into the world so that we might live through him. Love consists in this, not that we loved God, but that God loved us and sent his Son to be the atoning sacrifice for our sins. Dear friends, if God loved us this way, we must love one another. No one has ever seen God. If we love one another, God remains in us, and his love is made complete in us. This is how we know that we might remain in him and he in us. He has given us his Spirit. And we have seen and we testify that the Father has sent his Son as the world's Savior. Whoever confesses that Jesus is the Son of God, God remains in him and he in God. And we have come to know and to believe that the love that God has for us. God is love, and the one who remains in God, in love, remains in God, and God remains in him. In this, love is made complete with us, so that we may have confidence in the day of judgment, because as he is, so are we also in this world. There is no fear in love. Instead, perfect love drives out fear, because fear involves punishment. So the one who fears is not complete in love. We love because he first loved us. If anyone says, I love God, and yet he hates his brother or sister, he is a liar. For the person who does not love his brother or sister, whom he has seen, cannot love God, whom he has not seen. And we have this command from him. The one who loves God must love his brother and sister. So there's a lot to unpack there. We'll work through it. We'll work through it quickly this morning. The first thing is that God's default characteristic is love. All right? And I know right away, if you're like me, you feel resistance to this because the enemy wants you to question whether or not this is true. Because at the time John wrote this, there would have been no New Testament. We agree, church? Like all that stuff would have came after John, right? So that means that this portion of the Bible, from about right here on back, was all that they had. This on back contains a lot of war. It contains a lot of annihilation, right? It contains a lot of judgment, right? It contains a lot of stuff that makes it seem like the God of the Old Testament is different than the Jesus of the New Testament. We can kind of agree on that, right? I mean, if not, like you are in a better place with your spirit than I am. Because I will tell you still to this day, after all the education I got, the God of the Old Testament seems different than the God of the New Testament. I constantly have to be reminded that God's default characteristic is love. That everything he was doing in the Old Testament, even in that book of Jonah, when he lets Jonah get the worst sunburn of his life to the point where he's ready to be dead, that he's doing that out of love, right? That God never disciplines out of punishment. He never slaps you around and gives you more than you can handle because he's mad at you. Everything God does is loving judgment to bring you to repentance. Everything God does is an act of love. Every time he lets the enemy attack you, every illness he sends, every unanswered prayer, is love, right? It is loving. He does not do things to punish people. Not in the sense of, I'm just punishing you because you're bad. It is, I'm going to make your life difficult to discipline you, to bring you back to me. Like everything that God does is loving. And I know that's really, really hard because some of us have went through tragedies. Some of us have life situations in this very season where we're like, man, God doesn't seem very loving because he's not answering anything I'm asking for. Right? I remember very clearly, we were moving out of the parsonage of the last church and we had found a house and I thought God was doing everything in order. And I remember lifting up a box of books and my back, the same back that hurts me right now, just blew out. I remember dropping that box of books and just falling to my knees. I'm starting to realize I have a herniated disc. I have a herniated disc that pushes on my sciatic nerve. So when I get too fat or I get too much of a load over my belly, where my fat's at, guess what happens? That herniated disc blows out, and guess what it pushes on right away? Sciatic nerve, and what happens? The legs just go dead, right? Shocks down them, and they just go dead. Well, it happened right when I was moving. And I was like, are you kidding me, God? Like, I love you, and I'm never going to waver from you. But all I want to do is get this junk from one house to another so I can move on with my life, right? Like, right now's the time you're going to let this herniated disc slip out and pinch this nerve. Like, right now is when I'm going to have to deal with this. And I remember just crying out to God, right? And yet, guess what? He was still loving. If anything, he was slowing me down. He was slowing me down like, hey, you're rushing. You're rushing. Your life isn't as bad right now as you think it is, right? Like you think you're in a terminal state. You got a common cold, you know? Like you're acting like your life's in a cancerous state and you got a common cold, which I think every wife in here would say, yep, that's my husband too, right? Like I birthed children and my husband takes 2 weeks off with the common cold, right? It's okay. But I remember my mindset was like, God, where are you? Why are you, you don't love me, you know? It was the same day as a wrestling meet, so I had to text the coach, tell him I may not make it to a wrestling meet. And yet the whole time I'm like, where are you, God? Well, God was equally as loving in that moment. Like he slowed me down. He had to do some things to say, hey, pump the brakes, big fella. If you would have just waited for help, if you would have waited for that U-Haul to pull up, you wouldn't have had to carry that box by yourself. You're hurt because of your own wounded pride, right? You're hurt because of yourself. I'm still loving you. Like, I give you a family that's going to show up and move everything with you on the sideline now. You're not alone. God had to remind me I wasn't alone. Not only was he wasn't absent from me, my family picked up the pieces and moved everything in too, right? And so it can be so hard to forget in the midst of all the trials and tribulations that go on in our lives that God's default characteristic is love. And if you wonder if he's ever going to stop loving you, it's no, he's not. He's not going to stop loving you. It says, dear friends, let us love one another because love is from God, and everyone who loves has been born of God and knows God. Right? It says, God's love was revealed among us in this way. God sent his only Son into the world so that we might live through him. God doesn't send Jesus to the cross for us to be lovely people. Right? He doesn't send Jesus because in some way we could earn his love. Right? He sends Jesus because he showed us in that Old Testament, no matter how many times they tried, guess how many times they got it right? Never. He showed us in the Old Testament, time and time again, that there will be seasons where you feel like you're doing okay. Right? There will be seasons when you feel like you're winning. But in your winning, you'll lose sight of God, you'll crash and burn, he'll save you, redeem you, restore you. You'll get back on your feet, you'll think you'll start winning again, and guess what happens? You crash the plane. Because you're not supposed to be driving the plane in the first place, right? But you'll jump into the driver's seat, think that you can take over, you'll crash and burn the thing. He'll do all the work, he'll take it to the body shop, he'll pay for it, he'll do everything, he'll give you the car back and say, hey, you want to ride in the passenger seat or the driver's seat? And guess what we pick every time? I want to drive the car, Dad. Right? I want to drive the car, and guess where we end up? Right back in the ditch. And God does it over and over and over until he sends us this. He sends his Son into the world and says, okay, you've done it on your own long enough. You should by now have at least 4,000 years, right? You should have at least now 42 generations, right? 14 perfectly 3 times. All right, you have at least 42 generations of proof that you're not going to be able to do this on your own, right? So he sends his Son, and his Son lives and dies for us so that we can know a new type of love. Okay, so that we can know how to love, which brings us to this second point. We can love because God has revealed love to us. Right? I think about doing weddings. I went to a wedding on Sunday. Bless the guy's heart for doing the wedding. He tried to make it too cute for me. I'm just not a cute guy, you know. I wear my same pair of khakis that I wear whether I'm 350 or 400, you know. Like I'm just not a cute guy, you know. Until this polo gets holes in it or it looks too bad, I'm gonna wear it. It's an $18 polo from JCPenney's. I just not a cute guy, you know. I just don't know how to be polished and eloquent, you know. But this guy did, and bless his heart, you know. But I think of every time I do a wedding, you got to go to 1 Corinthians 13, right? Love is patient, love is kind, love does not boast, love does not keep record of wrong, right? And you go through all those characteristics. And then you get some wise guy that writes a book that just tells us, just substitute your name into that every single day. And just say, Roger is patient, Roger is kind. And guess what? About 30 minutes into the day, you live it out, right? And then your kids won't get buckled in their car seats, or you know, Hardee's park shift for breakfast for the 17th time in a row, and you know it's probably God saying, hey, back when hurt is bad, if you quit going to Hardee's twice a week, you know? Like every church meeting doesn't have to be at Hardee's, you know? Like you don't have to live there, you know? Like, even though I should be getting a membership card with a discount every time I spend so much money at Hardee's, you know? That's why I don't worry about the IRS auditing me. As when they opened up my bank account and they saw 17 Hardee's charges, they'd be like, there's no way this guy's good with money. Like, he ain't stealing anything. All right? So when we look at that stuff and we look at those characteristics, like, we can't live those characteristics out on our own. Like, and there's no one I can look up to in this room who can show me what love really is. Because every single one of us is tainted by sin. Every single one of us is tempted by our flesh to be egocentric, to think of it as, well, what do I have a say in this? You know, you don't believe me? Take four kids under 6 years old to a baseball game, and when they just want to run back and forth, and you're like, I paid $300 for us to come to this game, and you're not even letting me watch it, right? And the whole time, like, your brain should be going, you know, they're having the time of their life, and they're not hurting anybody staying right here. As long as they're within eyesight, and you can catch a foul ball, if you can get it before it gets them, like, it's not a big deal. But none of us are fully capable of loving because we stand in the way of love. And that's just the reality of the situation. That's not condemnation, guys. Understand, I'm not condemning you, and I'm not condemning me. We just need to be open with ourselves. That we have a big barrier in our life to love, and it's me. It's my wants, it's my needs, right? And doesn't that, you know, I think almost everybody in here except for Logan has a partner or has kids, right? Like, marriage is the great shower of how selfish we are, right? Like, it is the great shower of selfishness. The wants and needs of a husband and wife are two completely different things, right? Like, the husband wants to sit and watch the ball game. The wife wants to make sure the dishes are done, right? The husband wants to go do something like play outside or barbecue something. The wife wants to make sure laundry gets folded, right? Like, the husband doesn't care that kids are head to toe in mud, and he's laughing while they're doing something dumb, and the wife's like, oh my gosh, those are good clothes. Those are church clothes. How dare we get them dirty, right? Like, men and women are not created the same. So when they enter into marriage, guess what happens? There's conflict. There's tension. No marriage is bulletproof to tension, right? That's why I hate when at a wedding, we make it sound like this is the most glorious thing in the world. It's like, no, marriage is awesome. I love being married. I love my wife. But she also exposes how selfish I am, you know? And if she's being honest, guess what? I expose how selfish she is at times. And then being a parent takes it to another level. That kid needs you, and you'd rather sleep than be up with it, right? No matter how much you love the kid, when you're sleep deprived enough, you're like, won't this thing ever just sleep, right? Like, we are incapable of always prioritizing someone's needs above our own. In church, I want us today to admit that. Okay? I want us to admit that I can't love as well as I want to be able to love. Because it's only when we're willing to admit that we can start to look and go, well, I can love because God's revealed it to me. Right? Because God is the foundation of love. Because if I want to know how to love, I got to say I don't want to be like Roger. I want to be like God. I don't want to be like Roger. I want to be like Jesus. Right? And that has to be the foundation of everything we do. Like, we have to start admitting we aren't enough. And it's not to be condemned. It's not so it's like, well, you stink as a person. Right? It is so that we can be free to go, okay, devil, adversary, flesh, whoever wants to tell me I'm not good enough, fine, you're right. There's a great Southern gospel song that says, sometimes the devil tells the truth. If you haven't heard, go listen to it. It is a great song. I mean, I actually should just play it right now rather than preach, because it probably does a better job than I do. But it says, sometimes the devil tells the truth. Sometimes we are sinners. Sometimes we're not as loving as we should be. Sometimes we fall short. But yet, the beauty is, when we admit that, the cross takes over. Right? And we can love because God has revealed love to us. Right? No one has ever seen God. If we love one another, God remains in us, and His love is made complete in us. So when we choose to pursue God and the love He has for us, we become made complete in His love. That means we got to sacrifice a lot of stuff. Just like Nick Saban. Nick Saban is the biggest jerk of a coach you can have. Leave your shirt untucked for a second, he's yelling at you, right? You've been out there for 4 hours. You jump to catch a ball, shirt comes untucked. Might as well be doing up down. Sorry, coach. Like, I'll safety pin it in next time, right? Like, he's the biggest jerk in the world. But yet, at the same time, until Caden DeBoer took over, who could nobody beat? Alabama. Why? Because love sometimes looks harsh. Sometimes love looks mean and intimidating. But yet when you do the discipline things all the time and you cut out everything that stands in the way of what you want, you become what you want. And in our lives, church, we have to cut out everything that we don't want. Cut it out. You know, I just told Kelsey last night, I said, I think we need to institute a hard 8 o'clock, no technology. The TV goes off, our phones get plugged in, and we just spend from 8 o'clock until the kids finally pass out, just being intentional with our kids. Like, no more TV after 8 o'clock, no more cell phones after 8 o'clock. I think we have to make a drastic change in the house. That way kids can get to bed earlier, especially with another one going to preschool. She's like, I agree. That's a huge sacrifice for our house. Because you know when the Braves play? After 8 o'clock. You know, the Chiefs are going to play like 4 or 5 Sunday, Thursday, and Monday night games this year. I guess I have to check on it in the morning, you know? But let me tell you something, those are small sacrifices when we think about it, because if in today's age, everybody can just go rewatch the game, right? Everybody can just wake up the next morning, turn the game on, and now you can probably just watch it with highlights. You don't even got to watch our right tackle false start 37 times. You can just skip all 37 of those and just watch the actual game. But we can love because God has revealed it to us. And here's our last point. Love allows us to live without fear. I need this. I need this point. Because if there's one thing in my life that consumes me, it's fear. Am I doing enough? Am I good enough? Is the shoe going to drop? Is everything going to fall apart? Am I going to mess up? And I live with this day in and day out, and yet I have to be continually reminded, just like the point 1, I have to be continually reminded that God's default characteristic is to love. If He's disciplining me, if He's allowing my life to be hard, there is something He's loving me enough to grow me. I also have to remember this. Love allows us to live without fear. It says right here that there is no fear in love. Instead, perfect love drives out all fear because fear involves punishment. Church, God is not going to punish us if we are serving Him. He may discipline us, but it's a restorative discipline. It is a discipline to make us better, to make us more holy, to make us more into His image. There is no fear. We do not have to worry. Like, I do not have to worry right now if my back's going to get better or not. One, because at the end of the day, every day it's waking me up going, okay, Jesus, anytime you want to return, you can return, because I would really like it. I'd really like a shot at a new body. Right? If you could give me a spiritual six-pack, I mean, maybe I'll lay out Hardee's. Or God, maybe if you're real good, you won't have Hardee's in heaven. Right? There'll be no Hardee's, there'll be no Cracker Barrel, none of those things that have led to this issue that I got right now. Right? But I don't have to fear what if my back never gets better. I don't have to fear whether or not I'm going to fail here. I don't have to fear whether or not my daughter goes to preschool or my wife goes back to work. Like, I don't have to live in fear, because I know that no matter what happens, I have a loving God who's in control of all things. And that same promise goes for you guys, church. You realize that? That if God is who He claims to be, then there's nothing in this world to fear. Because we know that, as Paul says, to be absent from this body is to be home with God in heaven. So even if our life was taken from us right in this very moment, guess what? Before you guys even have time to mourn, guess who I see? Jesus. Right? And even if you guys are mourning my passing, guess what? It's just going to remind you that someday you get to see Jesus like I'm looking right now. There is no fear when you know God's love. Because nothing that can happen to you can undo this cross. This should allow us, church, to expose ourselves so much deeper than we ever want to. Like, if there's one thing in this season of the church that I want to see happen, is I want to see us go, God, leave no brick unturned. Love me so much that you convict me so deep that I feel as lost today as I did the day that I confessed faith to you. God, leave no brick unturned. And if Nick Saban goes that far with this football team, go miles further than that with me. God, leave no brick unturned in my life. Expose me to my core until all that I know is you and your glory. Drive me to my knees. Break my flesh so that all I know is you. Because at the end of the day, that's what we should want. We should want to, every place we go, people are like, that person is a fanatic for God. Like that person loves so radically different than anybody I've ever met. That person has to have been changed by something. Like they are proof. They are proof that God is real. Because look at how much different they are than everybody in the world. And that's what we should want. And not so that people can pat us on the back, but so that people can go, well, I want what they got. I don't know how they went through everything they went through in their life, and they're still joyous. They may not smile all the time, but they're not bitter. There is something in them that can't be shaken. Because let me tell you guys, that's what this world wants. That's what this world wants. That's why people go and buy the biggest house that they can. That's why people go and buy the biggest boat they can. That's why people go and spend money trying to find happiness. Is because they want to have something in their hand that is unshakable. That no matter what happens in their life, they can look at it and go, I'm okay. And then guess what happens? Iowa weather comes, we get these really hot days, and it gets really cold, a tornado comes and takes it all away. Right? Or the house just naturally deteriorates. Right? It just naturally deteriorates. All of a sudden the windows leak, you got roaches, it just, wear and tear happens naturally. And so what do? They sell that house and they go buy a new one, a bigger one. Guys, we chase jobs. We jump from job to job to job to job trying to find happiness when the only place to find happiness is laying at the foot of the cross saying, you know what, God? As long as I got you, no matter what else I have is okay. That's why hopefully I can testify to this church that as bad as I want to be moved into the parsonage, I'm not complaining about the house that I have in Mount Pleasant. Is that parsonage far superior in many ways? AC's the biggest one? Like, is it frustrating at times to have 2 window airs trying to cool a whole house? Is it frustrating when, $200 of your vacation money gets stripped away because the utility bill came and it's $200 more than it should have been? Yeah, it is, guys. It's real frustrating. But it doesn't shake my joy. I still have a house over my head. I still have a place that my family can go to every single day. And although it's not where I want to be, I'm content for this season that God is providing, right? And we have to face that battle in everything we do in our life. Yep, van's getting a little older. Do I trade it in for that new truck now that Kelsey and I are a little more financially stable? Right? Like, we're always faced with this. Is there something bigger and better on the other side? And I'm going to tell you, unless it's laying at the foot of the cross, it's not. Every car's going to break down. Every house is going to deteriorate. Every person you marry, that's why when people start talking about divorce, I'm like, well, let me tell you, if you do it again, you're going to figure the same thing out again. Right? Every marriage is going to have hard days. Raising kids is going to have hard days. Everything in life is going to have hard days. None of it heals us. None of it strengthens us. The only place we can run to for refuge is that cross and the work Jesus did for us. And trust that, as it says here, that the Holy Spirit is going to be in work in us and perfecting the love that God wants us to show the world. And I like that it says perfecting, because that's a continuation, right? Not that it's going to perfect it here, but it's going to be perfecting. We're going to continually be getting better, right? We're never going to be perfect, but we are going to get better if we do it the right way. And so, church, this is the message for today, is that we recognize love comes from God. We recognize stability comes from God. We recognize everything that we have the opportunity to do is because God. And man, we can't be silent about this message, church. We can't be silent. We can't keep it to ourselves. We can't. And I'm going to put it on you guys. And, I told you during Sunday today, I told you during the business meeting last week for the people who were there, I need you to pray for my boldness because we need kicked in the rear end. Because young 20-year-old people should not be going, hey, can I talk to you about the church? Can I talk to you about people who are claiming to be Christians and just ripping me apart? We have to be out there in the world showing the truth. We have to step up. And I'm not saying that legalistically. You're not going to be saved because you stepped up. You're not even going to earn any honor or glory because you stepped up. But the world needs you to step up. And God created you to step up. He created me to step up. And so we need to be out there, especially, we have multiple people in this church that work in the school. There are going to be kids this school year that need people to step up. That they need light. They're running to all the places. They're drinking, they're doing drugs, they're fornicating. That's a weird word for me to say, but it's not as, I guess, hideous for some of the younger kids. But there are people who are searching for identity desperately in our schools, and we need light. Honestly, it's the only reason I still coach. It's the only reason why it's the only reason why I don't want to give that part of my life up is sometimes I'm the only Christian that's coaching. Sometimes I'm the only person who quit caring about winning a long time ago. We need to step up. We need to be there for people. We need to be the light of the world. And so as we do this, we need to pray that God exposes us. And I know that's scary, right? That's really scary. Trust me, it's really scary for me to repeat what David said in Psalm 139. Search me and know me, Lord. Right? That's a dangerous prayer. But it's one we have to pray. We have to. If you want to be a Christian by more than name only, you got to say, God, turn every stone. I want you to go to the deepest, darkest places in my life. I want you to expose me at the core, so that from the inside out, I'm being made into who you've called me to be. And so I'm gonna pray this out here. I beat the little ones down today.